the good old two-handed weapons. The middle ground, or aka the middle child of the weapon categories. A useless weapon in the first game, but an overpowered shithouse, or a brick house in the second game. And why is it useless in the first game? It's because it gets overshadowed by every single weapon you can practically think of. Now you might, when you look at the two-handed weapons in the first place on the first game, you might think, oh, this weapon it has high damage but wastes my stamina and as well as swing slow, so this must be good. On early game, it is overpowered, because considering the fact that zombies are like very fragile and a gust of wind is able to literally just knock them off the floor and kill them entirely, it should come as no surprise that two-handed weapons on early games are very overpowered. But when late game or mid game comes in, they're literally just a shallow of a useless weapon slot that just chills on your backpack for no apparent fucking reason. And you might think, well, that extra damage has to be good, right? On certain situations, yes. But consider the fact that one-handed weapons have a twice as faster of a swinging speed than that of a two-handed weapon's one singular swing, it literally just overshadows it entirely. You want to use it against the goons and demolishers? Don't! Just use a shotgun instead. You want to use it against human enemies? Don't! Grab a pipe that does 20 damage and just spam the drop attack skill. Dying Light 1 is literally just a snooze fest even on nightmare difficulty. The game has always been easy, but I don't know. People have been saying like night times is scary and dark, but I don't know about you, Chief, but I don't consider this one dark or scary whatsoever. I don't know if that's just my Balkan ass that just like is not too fond of horror movies, or yeah, I'm not gonna go dive deep into that, but what I'm trying to essentially say is one-handed weapons may, or pardon me, two-handed weapons may seem good at first, but they were literally overshadowed by every single situation you can think of. Even against hordes of zombies like the Infamy Bridge, and that's pretty much it. That's the only time you're gonna find like that many zombies. And maybe the pit mission. That's it. But I'm getting out of topic. But the thing is, even with like skills like the windmill and the ground pound, they may seem good at first, but they're not really that good at all. Except for the windmill, which is the only good thing. But then again, grenades exist, and being able to hit multiple zombies with a power attack also exists with long weapons, because they have a faster swinging speed, and they don't consume as much stamina. A single ground pound, you wanna know what's funny? Even with this legend skill that increases your stamina, you can only do 2 ground pounds. And that's it, you're dry as shit. And the same thing sort of goes with the windmill. It doesn't take as much stamina as the ground pound, but you get the gist of it. It just takes so much stamina that it's not even really that worth it at this point. It's like the ground pound is not even that much good of a skill to begin with, considering the fact that it only knocks them to the ground and it doesn't really do that much damage. It does damage, but killing them is sort of difficult to do because it just simply sends in a shockwave that just knocks them on the ground. It damages them, but doesn't kill them. Yeah. The only time you're really going to find any effectiveness on the two-handed weapons on the first game, or any sort of like overpoweredness to it, is against the Night Hunter. Because this piece of shit of a weapon is so powerful against the Night Hunter, it makes every single degenerate anime profile picture Night Hunter that tryhards for a fucking living so angry that it makes them rage quit whenever they see you use them, even for a singular use. If you even touch them with it even once, they will start yapping about it. They will call you a bitch and maybe even leak your IP address, or who even knows what it is. They are so fucking crybabies to it that they will literally leave to it. That's how overpowered this thing is on the PvP section. Even throwing the damn thing, if you're in a 1v1, will literally do 150 damage, if not more, against the Night Hunter. That's how overpowered this piece of shit is.
I ever tell you about the time my buddy Keith fell out the road?
Even when there's 4 survivors. For some of you that don't know, when there's more survivors or players in a PvP match, the Night Hunter gets some bit of damage resistance to be able to survive encounters on against multiple players, which makes sense. But the two-handed weapon literally just says, nah, fuck you, I'm just gonna take half of your health with a single swing, cause why not? So, the only time two-handed weapons are overpowered is against the Night Hunter. Whole hordes of zombies is not good because grenades exist, and as well as bats and katanas are able to hit them with a power attack much more better and in a quicker session. Against human enemies, it's literally pointless because you could literally just grab a shit stick off a garbage can and just one-shot them with the drop attack skill. So what's the point? even against goons and demolishers, just grab a shotgun and kill them. The same thing goes against, like, volatiles, even the armored volatiles. Literally just grab a shotgun and just fucking blast them away. What's the point of using these? It's like, the overall short summary I can say about two-handed weapons is, why should you use them when they're overshadowed by many things? That's it. That's literally it. The only time you're really going to see someone use this is to cancel the animation. The only time you can really cancel the animation of the two-handed weapons is with the grappling hook, and that's it. But you can either only do it 2 times if you don't have the ultimate survivor skill, or 4 times at maximum if you have the ultimate survivor skill, and that's pretty much it. And once it goes on a cooldown, you're really just back to a very painful slow swing. Unless you're one of those degenerates that use an infinite grappling hook, then I might ask you to please throw that thing away and play the game normally, you boring pricks. Holy shit, there's a lot of you. But either way, I'm not going to delve too deep into it, because I'm already pissing off the DL1 fans, but I couldn't give much less of a shit, but let's get into it. How are they on the second game? Well, back when DL2 was first released, they were sort of the same way as in the first game, but literally better. The only good thing about them was their faster swinging speed, and when I mean fast, I mean fast. Here's a quick comparison between the two. You see it? Now, why do I think they were sort of the same way as in the first game? Well, that's because Techland, for some apparent reason, and I'm not gonna question their design of this, but for some reason, when DL2 was first released, every single two-handed weapon you can practically think of were unmodifiable whatsoever. You cannot apply a toxin effect, or a bleeding effect, or an empowerment, not even a charm. I think you might be able to put a charm, but I can't really remember, but I'm not gonna delve deep much into it. But you couldn't really do anything with that. Seriously, like, you couldn't really modify anything with it. On early game, it was solid, but on late game, because of how much damage increase the modifications give, it was sort of pointless. So, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm going this from my memory, but the only time they were allowed us to upgrade our two-handed weapons was the time where legend levels came in. Again, I could be very wrong, so please correct me down in the comments, but I think the time where we were able to upgrade our two-handed weapons was at the time where legend levels came in, and that's pretty much it. And when these babies came in, holy shit, they literally broke the meta entirely. They made one-handed weapons look like a fucking toy, and made the brawler skill look like a laughing stock, because two-handed weapons pair very effectively with the tank skill, because they provide a damage increase to both long weapons, pole arms, and as well as two-handed weapons, and provide an absurd amount of resistance to where you can practically become unkillable at certain situations, except for volatile tyrants, but that's normal, and it should not come as a surprise. But back to the topic. Even if you do sacrifice, like, damage for the sake of extra resistance, you will still deal so much damage against every enemy you can think of, because two-handed weapons, even if you don't have that much, like, damage increase on your armor, you're able to one-shot biters, two-shot virals, 3-shot one-handed renegades, 2-shot archer enemies, 5-hit a fucking two-headed renegade, and yada yada yada. The amount of power that this thing has is so good. Even against, like, enemies that are blocking or attack like human enemies, you're able to literally just pierce through their defenses and stun them for a split second and still damage them. That's how overpowered these things are. Even against a goon or a demolisher, these things will drain their health very quickly if you're able to dodge their attacks very effectively, and as well as against volatiles, revenants, banshees, whatever. These become one of the best weapon categories in the game because of their faster swinging speed compared to the first game, and as well as being able to hit multiple targets without having, you know, the bouncing effect like the one-handed weapons and long weapons have, and that's pretty much it. But what about with boosters? Surely with boosters, both of them might be, like, similar in some way. Do not use the Night Hunter booster with two-handed weapons. Just use a plain old knife, long weapon, and one-handed weapon, please. That's it. Sure, it might be able to give you the opportunity to one-shot certain enemies you normally wouldn't be able to, but one-handed weapons are also able to do that, so why even use it? But when you use a muscle booster on the second game, you literally just have a weapon that is able to kill enemies way faster than you should be. and I am not over-exaggerating when I say that. Even on early games, mid games, or late game, two-handed weapons have literally been dominating the weapon categories in the game. It puts one-handed weapons into shame, the brawler outfit into shame as well. So yeah, you could be using those weapons, like there's no problem with it, but consider the fact the amount of sheer power that two-handed weapons pretty much have, literally just make them better in every single situation you can think of, because you can perform ground pounds much more faster, and as well as windmill attacks much more faster, and they're literally better in every situation you can think of. That's it. They're so good that the only downside about them is a passive debuff that not a lot of people know. You see, there is a tiny bit of debuff that no one really knows about this, and that is, when you have a two-handed weapon equipped, or when you have it on your hands, you will be stunned for a slightly longer duration, which is an interesting feature that not a lot of people really talk about. You don't really see this happen with one-handed weapons, long weapons, and knives and polearms. This only occurs with two-handed weapons, so any staggering effect that applies to you, or any stunning effect, you will stun for a slightly longer period. Now, is that a problem? If you're surrounded, yes. But if you're able to literally dodge enemies very effectively, which is easy to do, and far more smoother, then you won't have a problem whatsoever, unless you have a toughness booster to literally counteract it entirely. But yeah, moral of the story. Two-handed weapons have changed a lot, going from a mediocre, if not overshadowed, weapon to literally being one of the best weapon categories in the game. Literally, the only time you're really going to be using one-handed or two-handed weapons in the first game is against the Night Hunter, and that's pretty much it. That is literally the only time two-handed weapons are literally overpowered and a must-have weapon. That's it. Unless you're going to be spamming with the grappling hook canceling animation, then I guess it can be effective. But then again, consider the fact that one-handed weapons and long weapons have a faster swinging speed and as well as better damage output, it just sort of gets overshadowed entirely, so yeah. I know this is a bit of a ranting, but this is how I overall see the two-handed weapons throughout the Dying Light franchise. Going from a mediocre, if not a overshadowed weapon, to being one of the best weapon categories in the game, and I will double down on that fact because there is no other weapon that is literally effective. I forgot to mention, do all of them behave the same way, if all of the two-handed weapons behave the same way? Not particularly. Although they may have like similar stats and as well as similar bullshitness to it, but they all behave slightly differently, and I will get into them right now. You see, two-handed axes in the first game, they are able to dismember enemies much more easily. No shit, Sherlock. Holy shit, I thought that would be obvious. But two-handed sledgehammers have a common tendency of stunning enemies much more easily. But you can literally do this easier with the fucking hammer, for God's sakes. You see how you see a pattern? Two-handed does something, but one-handed weapon does better. You see the pattern? I hope so. If not, please go drink some water. Anyway, what about Dying Light 2? What is exactly different with all the different two-handed weapon categories? Well, they're actually different. Not really, but they sort of behave slightly differently. Two-handed sledgehammers waste a lot of stamina per swing, but they have a common tendency of draining an enemy's stamina, or allowing you to stun them easily. This allows you to perform an executions easily, allowing you to gain infinite stamina for a brief period. This is very good if you're planning on fighting a huge amounts of enemies, if you're planning on farming on nighttime and yada yada yada. If you're planning on farming a lot, grab a two-handed sledgehammer and literally just go ham. Make sure you execute an enemy to gain that infinite stamina. Two-handed sledgehammers usually tend to have the least amount of damage compared to two-handed axes and as well as two-handed swords. So yeah, even with the least damage that they do compared to the other two-handed weapons, they're still able to one-shot biters and as well as two-shot virals if you have the right modifications and as well as the right passive skills from both the weapon itself and as well as from the armor. Two-handed axes are sort of in the middle ground between the swords and the sledgehammers. They do slightly more damage than the sledgehammers, but deal slightly less damage than the two-handed swords. But the difference between them is they take the least amount of stamina. That's it. Two-handed swords are sort of two-handed axes, but the complete opposite. They deal the highest damage compared to the other two-handed weapons, and they also take much more stamina compared to two-handed axes, but they don't take the same amount as a sledgehammer. that's pretty much it. If you're looking for raw power and huge amounts of damage, two-handed swords are perfect for you. If you're looking for a weapon that is able to stun enemies very quickly and allow you to execute them, sledgehammers come in as well. But if you want a sort of a middle ground between the two, then two-handed axes are your perfect choice. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, I can safely say that Dying Light 2 two-handed weapons are 100 times a huge improvement compared to the first game. And I don't think I really need to say much on why or how. I have sort of showed a very good briefcase on it. Two-handed weapons are useless against every single enemy you can think of except for whole hordes of fighters, but then again, grenades exist, and as well as long weapons are able to do that. You get the gist of it. The only time it's effective is Night Hunter, yada yada yada, and two-handed weapons on the second game is literally just overpowered in every situation you can think of. That's it. I was about to say something, but something got into my throat. I'm sorry. But either way, I hope this video helps you understand how two-handed weapons evolutionize throughout the series. What else is there to say? That's it. If you excuse me, I'm going to go and, actually, I don't know what to do. Goodbye, have a good day, treat each other with respect, take care of each other. Now get out of here, have a good day, shoo.